What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 3 tips to be a better overall quarterback. So we're going to be talking about your guys' foot placement on a pre-throw position to give yourself more arm strength, more accuracy, and take pressure off of your arm, how you guys can be more accurate throwing on the run, and then how you guys can, correct your release point to where you're not throwing with that ball outside of your frame, throwing sidearm, throwing too high, etc. So I hope this video helps you guys out, but also, fellas, if you're a QB and you want to get some training in with us and myself, this offseason, we are traveling out to 2 more locations for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camp. So we are in Nashville, Tennessee currently right now for a camp. Next up, we are going to be traveling out to Salt Lake City, Utah, then Los Angeles, California to finish off the year. So if you guys are local to those 2 cities, would like to get some work in with us, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our off-season camps. Let's get started. So first thing I want to talk about is this position right here from Joe Burrow where his back leg is located. So I'm going to play this throw full speed. Now, you guys may have seen the clip where he talks a little bit about his weight staying back, him getting more rotation with his back hip and with his front hip, and we're going to kind of talk about how that can help with this. So many quarterbacks, whether they were taught wrong, because an old school method of teaching is that, like, hey, you want a really wide base. You want your feet to be outside of your shoulders, so you end up taking a quick front stride. But the problem with that when your feet are way outside your shoulders is you don't get any hip rotation. Guys, being a quarterback is about rotating. We're rotational athletes, and rotation comes from your hips, not from your shoulders, which is what we're going to talk about later with a clip from Lamar Jackson. So when you guys get into a throwing position, you want to really think about where your base is in terms of percentage, like 60-40, 70-30. You've probably heard those phrases before. And you want to think about where your back foot is located. So the good gauge that I always say is you want to be 70% on this back leg and 30% on the front leg. Now, why is that? Why do you want to be loaded on that back leg? Because when you have that weight on the back leg, you can transfer that 70% to the front leg, which is what will naturally get your hips to open up. See, a lot of quarterbacks think about like, oh, I just want to rotate with my hips, but they keep all their weight on their back foot and they never end up actually rotating because they never transfer their weight. When I say transfer the weight, I don't mean bring the leg all the way through, and I don't mean pushing off the inside arch of the foot. I mean, you are loaded with this back leg, 70% on it, and then the back foot's under your frame, and you are shifting the weight from your back quad. When you can shift that weight to the front quad, that is what can get that front hip to open up, and that is what can get that back hip to rotate through before the ball does. And that is the position that we want to try to get to, because that is what takes stress off the arm. It's like hitting a baseball. It's like hitting a golf ball. When you hit a baseball and you have that baseball bat go back, what brings the bat through? The pivot of the back foot, right? Squishing the back bug, as people say. That gets your hips to go through, and the bat trails behind. Same thing when I throw a football. But if I don't get to this pre-throw position and I think about transferring weight, my front hip will lock out, and I won't have any rotation. So make sure, fellas, that this back foot is underneath your back shoulder. You have about 70% of your weight on here, and we are light with the front foot so I could transfer it through to get more hip rotation. A good gauge, something I've been telling my quarterbacks, is you want to try to think of it like your knee gets to your pinky toe. You want to sit to where your knee gets to your pinky toe. You don't want your knee to cave inward, because when your knee is caved inward and it's almost like towards the floor, I guess, you're going to push more off that back foot. Your leg is going to extend behind because you're not transferring weight from your quad, and you're not going to get that hip rotation. You have to be 70-30, knee to pinky toe, and drive and shift the weight to the front leg so those hips can rotate through. And this is a great example of that from Joe Burrow. So let's play this thing again, fellas. If you guys can get to this spot, you will see more velocity on your throws, more distance on your throws, and more consistency, because you can rotate at your hips, not your shoulders, and we are going to talk about that in a second. So let's play it full speed. Great job by Burrow rotating at the hips and being able to finish right through. So we're going to come back to this Kyler Murray clip of him throwing on the run. I want to talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson throwing first, and then we will come back to this to show you guys how you could throw better on the run. So this clip here from Lamar Jackson, I want to talk a lot about that hip rotation that we just mentioned, but also how a disciplined front side can make your release very, very consistent. So let's play this thing full speed. So a lot of people have this common misconception. A lot of old school guys have this common misconception that your release point when you throw the ball has to be like perfectly over the top, perfect 90-degree angle. What we have to understand is, as quarterbacks, everybody's built different. Lamar Jackson is built a lot different than Joe Burrow. Fact. Kyler Murray is built a lot different than Tom Brady. Every single quarterback in the dang country, every person has a different body type and looks different, has a different body. No two people are the exact same. So guess what? Your throwing motion is not going to be the exact same as somebody. A lot of people ask a question like, hey, whose throwing motion should I copy? Is Mahomes, does he have a good motion to copy? Lamar Jackson? It's not about that. It's about being efficient at the things the best guys in the world do. And what they all have in common is that hip rotation, like we were talking about with Burrow, and a disciplined front side that allows them to get to extension. An extension is how you are more accurate and get a better spin on the ball. An extension is essentially right here. You see how Jackson, when he flicks his wrist, that is extension. I know you can't really see it because of his back, but that's what I mean by extension. So when you guys go to throw, it's a lot about being able to generate hip rotation, like I said, but torque. And torque is how you get power on the ball. That's the baseball swing. Separating your shoulders, letting the hips bring the shoulders through. Separating your shoulders, letting the hips bring the football through. That is how we get torque. But to correct my release point, what a lot of people talk about is, oh, you want to change up the arm angle, throw in different arm slots. Everybody's got a different arm slot, and you got to be able to throw in different arm slots. But naturally, you shouldn't be thinking about that. You shouldn't be thinking about where is your arm positioned. You should be thinking about the hip rotation and the front side staying square. So as quarterbacks, you want to think of your body like it's split down a midline. But whatever your front side does, that's going to affect your release. And if it doesn't allow your release point to get to extension, that is when you have a flawed release point. So a lot of QB coaches used to teach, oh, you want to take this elbow and swing it down, like elbow the midget. Some people say that, elbow your little brother, whatever it is. But when you swing this elbow down, yeah, it's a source of power, but your arm pushes high and you can't get to extension. You are coming down on the ball because you're flying off the midline. Now, a lot of other people said that, oh, you want to take this left shoulder and you want to replace where your back shoulder was. So you want to swing that all the way open so your left shoulder is over here. Now, when you swing the shoulder off the midline this way, what do you think happens to your arm? Your arm flies out. Now, I'm not talking about sidearm when you change up the arm angle and you have to throw like around a defender right here and you have to throw it around him. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a flawed release point, because when this goes wide, the release goes wide and you come across. You can't get to extension because your arm path is flawed. So a good spot that you want to try to gauge to, I heard this the other day with the front hand. You want to think of it like you're singing into a microphone. Hand by the face, sing it into a microphone, and your shoulders and hips stay parallel to the target. So now this, and I talked a little bit about torque, I'm going to get to that. But when you stay square and the hand stays by your face like you're eating a sandwich, singing into the microphone, your release point stays at a consistent spot. And now, since I'm not flawed with my front side, I can get to extension. Now, the issue that guys have is they'll think about this, but they forget about the hips. And now that's when it feels very, very weird, because now they're limiting their upper half. They're getting to extension, but they feel like they have no power. And that is why we need to be able to rotate from the lower half, have that rotation, and be able to generate torque. So look where Lamar Jackson is. He's got that back foot under that frame, about 70, 65, 70 on the back leg, light on the front foot. So he's transferring, right? Now what happens? Front hip opens, back hip is going through. That hip rotation and weight transfer, fellas, made that ball go through. It was not because of the front side. And that is how we are consistent, get more velocity, and get more torque. We have to be able to transfer, let the hips go, upper half stays loaded, and upper half finishes square. That is textbook right there. That is not a flawed release point. He is not throwing sidearm. He just naturally has a lower arm slot than some other people. But as long as we stay disciplined front side, can rotate with those hips and get that front hip to open, believe me, fellas, we are going to be more consistent and have more velocity. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great example from Lamar Jackson about that arm slot and that front side discipline. Okay, so now let's get into this clip with Kyler Murray. Main thing, I want to talk about the throwing side foot. So let's play this clip from Kyler Murray. This is a situation that you're going to get a lot as a quarterback. You're not going to get the traditional sprint out, get depth, run at the target. You're going to be in a situation where you're being chased by somebody and you got to be able to make a throw. Today's game constantly changes, especially the quarterback position. So when the quarterback position is constantly changing, you constantly got to evolve with the position. You can't be, especially coaches, you can't be that old school guy that never evolves and you're very closed-minded. You got to be open-minded to change. And when somebody's doing something you maybe haven't seen before and you can relate it to a game, a lot of people can't relate the shit that they do to a game. If you can relate it to a game situation, maybe that's something we should look into and try to apply. So what Murray does such a great job of here is on the run, your accuracy comes from your throwing side foot. So when you guys got to throw a ball, you're running towards the sideline and you got to hit a route that's maybe slightly behind you, right in front of you. You have to point that throwing side toe because that will get your hips to the target. So when you can point your throwing side toe in the direction of the throw, the hips can get loaded. And when you load your hips to a target and this non-throwing side foot kicks through and you can finish square, what do you think happens to your release point? It's at not a flawed spot, and you can get to what? You can get to extension like Murray does right here because he's not swinging the front elbow. He's not running towards the sideline and throwing. He got his hips to the target. As his hips went to the target, he rotated to set him up for a position of torque, and then that leg kicking through is just icing on the cake so that release point is not flawed, and he could extend to the target to be more consistent. So fellas, key points to be accurate on the run. Point the toe, kick the leg throughout the target, and make sure we finish square with the upper half. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Murray rolling out. Great job pointing that toe at the target, fellas. We have to work a throw like this whenever I train because, again, realistic situation you will face. How often does your team sprint out? If it's not that often, you will do that, what Kyler Murray just did, more often than the basic traditional sprint out where you could run at the target. Get comfortable being uncomfortable because that's how the game is played nowadays. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys as usual. And again, fellas, if you would like some more information on our off-season 2 training camps in Nashville, or Salt Lake City, excuse me, we were in Nashville this weekend, in Salt Lake City or Los Angeles, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out. I'll see you guys next time.